This is a News 10 special report. A fallen hero, remembering Officer Rob Pitts. Now Patrice Dayton and Rondrell Moore.
Funeral services for fallen Terre Haute police officer Rob Pitts started moments ago. This is a live picture from inside the Holman Center. Good morning to you, and thank you for joining us for our special live coverage today. We will be on air through the entire funeral for Officer Pitts. He was shot and killed Friday evening at the Garden Quarter Apartments in southern Vigo County. Here's a look at what we'll be covering for you. We have an expert in the studio to talk us through all the aspects of today's services. News 10 also has a crew outside the Holman Center. There are live crews stationed along the processional route. I will be at the cemetery in Sullivan later as the procession arrives. But right now, we want to take a couple of minutes to reflect on the loss of this officer who gave the ultimate sacrifice.
Shots were exchanged with Terre Haute police officers and the suspect, which resulted in one of our officers being killed.
It's such a huge sacrifice when you put that uniform on just to protect your neighbors.
We were in 4 separate cars and I watched my friend get killed.
When we found out it was Rob, then immediately our hearts were just overwhelmed with sorrow.
He is a fine officer who was going towards danger to assist his fellow officers in apprehending a homicide suspect today.
We feel for the department, the family, the brothers, sisters, the parents. We are just one big family.
We're here to support the law enforcement and support Terre Haute PD. I mean, this is our worst nightmare come true.
People are engaging with law enforcement, and we are losing our lives.
Rob he's a great man, great friend, great classmate, great brother policeman. I mean, he'll be missed.
It's a scary time that we live in, to know that there's a day that you might come home and you might not be there.
Police officers of this community are amazing. They're second to none. And we just want to stand by them and support them in their time.
My heart goes out to that family of the officer. I mean, it's sad.
He was a man of character and a man of honor, and just made an impact with his service and just the way he lived his life.
Being close to home, knowing Rob all my life, it really hit home.
They're giving their lives for our community, and that's the greatest sacrifice you could give.
You know, we just ask that people say their prayers, hug your loved ones, because you never know when it's your last time.
It is a tragedy that has affected thousands. Well, now let's head over to Patrice Dayton, who is in studio with the South Bend, Indiana Police Chief.
Rondrell, as you know, the law enforcement profession is steeped in tradition. Officer Rob Pitts will be laid to rest today with full military honors, a funeral, a procession, and a burial that will be full of tradition and history. Now, to help me talk you through all of this tradition is a gentleman joining us today, Scott Ruskowski. Scott is the Chief of Police in South Bend. He has been the chief since 2015, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for joining us to talk us through this tradition and to just be with us today.
Well, thank you, Channel 10, for having us and for caring about us and not forgetting about us. It's very important as police officers, and I think the community needs to see and hear what you all are doing and what we are doing as well. So thank you so much for having me.
The funeral is about to begin here any minute. Walk us through what we'll see today.
So right now you'll be seeing the file by, which is the officers will be filing by, and there's many. I don't have a count yet, but throughout the program we'll be able to get you a count. But my guess is between probably 900 and 1,200 officers. That usually seems to be the case, especially in this area. After that, the services will start. Per the program, there will be many things obviously on the program, as with any service, but there will be some components where we'll do police matters within that program. It may not be written on the program, but there will be some things that will happen on there. But it's very chaotic. It's controlled chaos. This started from day one. We started out about 5 o'clock this morning, and we didn't end until roughly, I think, 1:30 this morning. So we had about a 3 or 4 hour time gap in there, and everything was set up. It's like herding cats on ice is what it's like.
It will be an impressive sight, though, for sure. It'll be moving, but impressive to see so many officers from all over, not just here, from all over the country.
Yes, it will be. I mean, we have New York, Colorado. We have several from Illinois. I believe we have some from California as well. So there will be thousands of officers, and again, from all over the country as well.
You're looking at live pictures from inside the Holman Center. Things have not officially started just yet. Outside the Holman Center, we will have a live report as well, that you will see the officers lined up on either side of the sidewalk to welcome the funeral coach. Now, I do want to point out that throughout this broadcast, we will be calling it the funeral coach, not hearse, as many of you are used to hearing. Why the difference? Tell us. There is a definite difference.
There is. A hearse is when it's empty. A coach is when it's occupied. It's just a shorter version of a caisson. If you remember the horse-drawn caisson, like most people remember the Kennedy funeral, John Kennedy's funeral.
Sure.
It's similar to that, but that's why they call it a coach, just a shortened version of the caisson.
Interesting. Okay. So also there will be a procession, a very long procession that could take an hour and a half to 2 hours, and it will be involved hundreds of cars, 500 to 700 cars that we understand, going from Holman Center to Sullivan, where he'll be laid to rest.
That's right. It's at least an hour and a half. It's about a 26-mile journey to get there, and it's based on speeds, road conditions, and other drivers as well. So we just obviously ask the community's patience in this, and if you're able to, get out on the road and help pay your respects. That means a lot to the officers.
Absolutely. It is a way that you can pay your respects. We're going to show you detailed maps now of where that procession will happen. It will leave Holman Center and go south down 13th Street to Erie Canal Street. From Erie Canal to McDaniel Road, the procession will get on 641 South. Then from 641, it'll get off to 41 South, from Terre Haute all the way to Sullivan. Several streets in Sullivan will be involved. First, Section Street in Sullivan. Then from Section Street, the procession will move to Washington Street, Wolfenberger to Johnson. And the cemetery is right off of Johnson Street. Now, please be patient. If you were in downtown Terre Haute this morning, it was already chaotic with a lot of traffic trying to get to Holman Center. The procession will be a long, respectful journey, and that's what we need people to be, is respectful. Pull over, get to the side of the road, get out, and pay your respects. I know there are several schools that are going to shut down or dismiss early or bring their kids out to show them this is history, this is tradition.
Yeah, so the emotion's already started, and I just think, going over and over again in so many funerals, and when officers and everybody gets to see the kids out there, especially the little kids out there, thanking Officer Pitts, or any officer for that matter, for what they've done, what they've sacrificed, yeah, it tends to get a little emotional.
Well, it's a lesson to these children to see, first of all, to learn respect, which is so important, and to see how they're protected, how they can go to school every day safely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, unfortunately, you have done this a number of times. Tell me the group that you're involved with and the tradition of that group.
So it's the Indiana State Critical Incident Memorial Team. Okay. It's sponsored through the Indiana State FOP. They've been around haphazardly for many, many years, but really organized probably 12 to 15 years ago. And what we do during all that is, again, it's from start to finish. So immediately we have a critical incident response where we get with family members and the department and surrounding agencies and do a diffusing and a debriefing to try to get people in focus to what needs to happen next. And quite frankly, the bottom line is the best we can do is the least we can do. Mm-hmm. Everything is absolutely done for the family first and foremost on behalf of Officer Pitts. And secondary would be Terre Haute PD, whatever their needs or wants are, and we try to incorporate the two. So as a team, we do everything from help with the funeral arrangements all the way to the final burial till the last person walks away.
Our coverage, remembering Officer Rob Pitts, begins now outside the Holman Center with News 10's John Swanner.
Thank you, Patrice. We are outside of Holman Center, like you said, as things are a lot quieter now. A few moments ago, though, it was very busy and very emotional for quite matter, because behind me, these SUVs carried the family of Rob Pitts. Now, some of them were dressed up, as you can imagine, for those attending a funeral, but most of the family were wearing gray T-shirts commemorating Officer Pitts' service. Chief John Plassey hugging several members of the family as they arrived here, many of them in tears, many of them with very sad looks on their faces. And then from that point, they walked down the sidewalk to my left to the main doors here at the Holman Center. On either side of them, flanking either side of them, were police officers saluting them and standing in attention. It was a very emotional scene. And then there are also several motorcycle officers here from not only Terre Haute Police, but Indianapolis Metropolitan Police. I see Carmel Police and other departments from throughout Indiana. There is going to be a large motorcycle officer contingency from here to Sullivan as that procession gets going. In fact, those officers will be the ones leading the way. So once again, the family of Officer Pitts arrived in the SUVs behind me. They will depart behind the motorcycle officers that are here from various departments from throughout the state of Indiana. I've also seen officers from South Bend, Vigo County. You name the city. Linton, Indiana is here. If you name the city in Indiana, most likely they are among the 1,200 officers that the South Bend Police Chief talked about just a few moments ago. And we'll keep you abreast of anything that's happening out here. We'll bring you the pictures that happen outside the Holman Center once the funeral wraps up inside the Holman Center. Back to you.
Oh, yeah, there's not.
We also want to mention that we have a live look from on top of the parking garage at all of the vehicles that are all over the Holman Center. You can see that now. This is a live look on top of the parking garage. Scott, you notice that all the flags are at half staff. Governor Eric Holcomb of Indiana, of course, ordered that. And those will stay at half staff, through sunset today?
Yes, yes.
That is tradition, of course. A way to show the respect.
Right. President, governor, the governor could order the entire state to be half-staff. I'm not sure if he did that or not, but often the governor will, and a mayor can actually do it too with city buildings if none of the above do it.
Okay. You can see lots of cars lined up there. That's just a small, minute amount. If we could take a shot in the Holman Center again, looking live in the Holman Center, tell us what they're doing now.
So you see two officers, one at the head, one at the foot of the casket. Right now you're seeing officers file by. It's called the guard that's at the casket. They will change about every 10 to 15 minute intervals. And then when all the officers have passed through, you'll have the officer in charge will come and recover, is what it's called. The officers that are doing the watch, they'll walk off and then the services will start.
Officer Pitts' body, it's my understanding, has never been left alone. Tell us the history of that.
From the time he was at the hospital to the time you see right now has never been left alone. We don't leave anyone behind. It's similar to the military too, with a constant guard. The only time we walk away is at the very end when the last person walks away.
And this is a real honor for them, isn't it, to be one of these guards?
It is. Terre Haute PD, phenomenal. I can tell you I have not seen, even in South Bend, where you have every single watch there's a Terre Haute officer, even if they're doing multiple times in a row. So that's beyond dedication.
And you say once these gentlemen step aside from the casket, that is when the funeral will officially begin?
Yes.
Okay, so we will watch for that. In the meantime, let's talk about your uniform. It is steeped in tradition.
There are many things, and each agency is different as well. But one thing that's not different, as you'll see of this braid right here, it's a thin blue line braid, and you also see it on the mourning band as well. And a lot of people go, what's that thin blue line for? Is that the wall of silence that the police keep? And that is totally not true.
Just the opposite.
Just the opposite. It's the thin blue line is the line between chaos and community. We are the protectors in between. We don't want, obviously, chaos happening in our community or to our community, and that's what we do. So that's why you see this. The red signifies a fallen officer, a line of duty death. That's the only time that we'll wear a red braid. No ceremonies, no parades, or this is the only time that we'll wear that. And the other stuff is just departmental things, and we have what you see here is the state, is something from the state team that we wear, and then, of course, the badge and the name tags.
Well, also, take a look at the carnation. It is upside down, and it has a small dot of red.
So the carnation, being white itself, is for purity and promise. we raised our right hand that we would sacrifice our lives if we had to, and this is obviously what Officer Pitts did for our community. So promise and purity, and then the red in the middle is for the blood that he shed on behalf of his community and for all of us.
There have been florists all week getting busy. About 1,500 of those white carnations that the officers will each have today, all white carnations with that red dot. Now, we have live footage of people filing in. You can see this is live outside Holman Center here in Terre Haute. The officers are lined up. Tell us what's about to happen.
So they're lining up, they're still doing the file by, and again, there's many. I'm guessing between probably about 12 to 1,500 officers, and that's just off the top of my head. We really don't know, but I can tell you that they mustered or they gathered across the street in the parking garage, which is where their briefing occurred, explaining where they're going to go, how they're going to line up, who they follow, etc. And you can see that is a very long line. There may be even more than that.
Officers and their wives, it looks like.
Yes.
And an impressive sight there with the men and women holding the American flag. Look at that. There's also the thin blue line flag there as well. Scott, tell us about that.
Yeah, so that's just a variation of the American flag. That's what we have, with police officers, and you see the thin blue line in one of the stripes that are there. But no, I'm glad you said something, because before we never used to have spouses or significant others with officers. They were always separated. And it's not just us raising our right hand in this profession to do these things. The family takes that oath as well, even though they don't have to, and they certainly don't want to. And just imagine what families have to live with, thinking about their loved one every time they go out there.
Well, and that's one thing that we talked about this week. We've interviewed several of officers' wives, and they are drawn to tears to think about, as one woman put it, and you saw it at the beginning of our broadcast, this is their worst nightmare. The families live your work every day, and the children, in some cases, don't even want you to go to work.
Absolutely. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize as well is officers typically spend more time with their police family, more hours in the day than they do with their own family. And that is such a sacrifice all the way around from family and friends outside of the police department. And a lot of people don't realize that.
Well, and we can't thank you enough, and I hope I do thank you throughout this broadcast for your service and for your sacrifice with family. We saw a group, it was called Blue Knights, a motorcycle group there in town and from all over. They really come out and show, the one thing I've noticed about Terre Haute, I've been here 30 years, a long, long time, the Wabash Valley, the entire Wabash Valley, is two things: very, very generous and very, very patriotic. And when you see this, it just warms your heart.
It is, and the Blue Knights themselves are predominantly active and retired police officers. That's how it actually got started.
Okay.
And they go, it doesn't matter what the weather is, it doesn't matter any of the conditions, they are out there, they are always there. I mean, there are many others too, but those are the most prominent that we notice, obviously, because they come from a police perspective.
Sure. We also want to take a look. There is a program for the service today, and obviously Rob was a country fan. There's a lot of country music tributes.
During the viewing last night, it was, I can't think of any other songs that weren't country songs. Everything was country, so it appears that way.
Well, and even though today is sad, it's also a celebration of life, and we want to thank the Pitts family for that life. Rob Pitts was 45 years old, very young, 16 years with the Terre Haute Police Department, 6 years with the Sullivan Police Department. He graduated and grew up in Sullivan. And later in this broadcast, we will see a beautiful, magnificent flag that will be called the Garrison flag, that you'll tell us the history of that later. But it will be right at the Sullivan-Vigo County line because he sacrificed for both counties, and he loved both counties.
Well, not just the local, but think about it. I mean, there's not a specific wall here. There's other than the specific wall here. He will be in Washington, D.C. His name will be forever etched there with the almost 22,000 other names of officers who've been put up there. So it wasn't just community. This was country as well. Not much different than the military.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Taking a look now inside the Holman Center again, you can see that folks are filing in, again, this file by. This could take a long time.
It could take probably an hour, hour and a half. Again, it's based on how many officers and how many significant others or spouses they have with them, or family members.
So just the file by, you think, will take that long?
It could.
Wow, okay. An outside view also, we have a live view from outside the Holman Center, again, showing those blue knights there with the flag, such an impressive sight. And all of the officers, and I believe their wives, some of them filing in. Well, it looks like just the officers now. It looked earlier that there were some wives with them.
And there will be, and they could have specific functions as well. I know there are some things like Officer Pitts was a member of the street crimes team, their street crimes team here, and I know that their street crimes unit had gathered as one.
Yes.
They will, I'd imagine, do something specific themselves and then return in line with everyone else.
Look how long that line is.
Yeah, that's only what you can see. It probably still goes into the garage and maybe even on the surrounding blocks.
So impressive. You mentioned the street crimes unit. Yes, Rob Pitts was a member of the Terre Haute Street Crimes Unit. And every time that we did a Crime Stoppers report, our viewers are very familiar with our live Crime Stoppers campaigns. Rob was a part of that. Rob came and did part of our live broadcast and helped us get the bad guys that they had warrants for year after year after year. So all of us at News 10 certainly thank him for his service in helping us with our campaign and getting drug dealers and child abusers and off the streets.
The whole department, the street crimes, absolutely. The entire department. Unfortunately, this is my second time being down here in about 7 years, I believe.
Yes.
It's been. I know the chief. I know Chief John. What a phenomenal man. He's holding up pretty well. I don't know if I could hold up the way, or any chief could hold up the way that he's done it, especially within 7 years. And obviously, Rob, being a friend of his as well, makes it even that much harder. I mean, everybody's your family on the police department, especially when you're a chief. But when you have a very close friend within that family, it's even more difficult. And God forbid I wouldn't want any chief or any department to have to go through this again.
Well, we want to mention, too, that it has only been 7 years. In July will be the anniversary for the loss of Brent Long. Brent and Rob were also friends as well. So that anniversary is coming up. And like you said, it is tragic to have to go through this in our community within just a short time of 7 years. There is an impressive picture. This is inside the Holman Center. It's starting to fill up now.
Yeah, and you'll see, it's about 8,500 people that holds, and my guess is they're going to be at capacity. That's only the seating component. There'll be hundreds of others that will be standing and doing things behind the scenes.
Sure, and that's just the floor view. There are all the stadium seating as well. That this funeral is, of course, open to the public, and some of the public will be there. You know, during that public viewing yesterday from 2 to 7 at the Holman Center, it looked like there was just a constant flow of people saying their respects. And many of them, most of them, I would assume, did not even know Officer Pitts.
Right, but if you know one officer, you knew Officer Pitts. And that's the theme or the mantra that we love to have. I mean, if you know one, you know all. Sure. And I think that was imperative, and I believe we saw that last night.
Officer Pitts leaves behind 3 children, one a grown-up boy, then a teenage daughter, and 5-year-old Dakota. We introduced you to Dakota throughout our newscast. He's a precious little boy. We have some pictures of Dakota there. He says that he and his dad love that car. And if you went by the memorial, which is where he is, there at the Terre Haute Police Department headquarters, you saw notes to Dakota. Dakota wrote a note to his dad that said, "Dear Dad, I miss you and I love you." And it was really amazing. I was there yesterday at the memorial. It was very moving to see the notes to Dakota to lift up his spirits.
Yeah, and it's so hard to do, especially with a 5-year-old and all other family members as well. But one can only imagine what that little boy is thinking right now, and what he will be thinking for the rest of his life. But knowing that his dad did what he did best for somebody else, and I don't care who you are, you can't get any better than that.
No, you absolutely can't. That memorial is still at the headquarters of the police department. It is very touching. Flowers, statues, mementos, flags, all sorts of things that people have put. And again, this community is going through this again. They did that 7 years ago.
Yeah, and you'll see even throughout the procession, there'll be officers that will be standing guard out there by the car, and they'll have a picture of Rob out there as well. So you'll see that, and my guess is they took several items away, not to get rid of them, but to store them, because so much so many things make it. Teddy bears, flowers, notes, just like you said. There's many things that will, and they removed it.
Now, this is the beginning stages of the memorial, and you saw that black drape. That's a sign of mourning for the police department.
It is. So that's one of the reasons, again, going back to the mourning band or the black drape, way back when, it wasn't just with police, but if a family member passed, people would wear a black band on their arm to be recognized or acknowledged for somebody passing in their family. We just carried on that tradition, and so we'll put the black mourning band obviously on a car, on our badges, on our license plates, and you'll see a black flag on a lot of the antennas on police cars as well.
Okay, and again, it is a sign of mourning. We're going to go back to live outside the Holman Center. There we go. And again, they're continuing to file in with the blue knights holding the flag. John Swanner joins us again live. John?
Thank you, Patrice, and they are filing in as we speak. Countless officers from all over the state of Indiana are now filing in. I'll move out of the picture so that you can see. I've seen officers from New Albany, Sellersburg, Fishers. In fact, I talked to a former Terre Haute police officer who is now on the Fishers Police Department. We're seeing Lake County Sheriff's Office, officers from Pokagon and Arcadia in the northeastern part of the state. They're from all over, and they're all here for the same reason, and that's to see and pay their final respects to Officer Rob Pitts. And just talking to some people out here, the mood is very somber, but they're also sharing stories, some of them that knew Officer Pitts, talking about what an awesome officer he was. The officer from Fishers that used to be on Terre Haute Police told me he did not know Officer Pitts, but he heard nothing but good stories about him. And of course, then we got to talking about Officer Brent Long, who was the last Terre Haute police officer killed in the line of duty just 7 short years ago. And he said it was very difficult to be back in Terre Haute under such difficult circumstances. And he also echoed the South Bend chief's remarks about how well Chief Plassey is holding up considering the circumstances that are going on today. But once again, people are slowly filing inside the Holman Center. Not just police officers, but also their wives, and in some cases they've also brought their children with them to this funeral to pay their final respects to Officer Pitts. So we'll have much more from outside the Holman Center, but for now we're going to send it back to the studio.
Thank you very much, John. Let's talk about what we will see today in the funeral. This program has scripture, some speakers, musical tributes, family remembrances.
It is, and most of them are pretty similar, but again, this is based on what the family wanted to see during the services. Again, with input from Terre Haute Police Department and maybe some from our team, but this is 99% came straight from the family, what they want to see, what they want to hear.
So family first, Terre Haute Police Department wishes second,
yes,
and then tradition.
Yes.
Okay, so tradition can go by the wayside at times if the family chooses.
It could, absolutely could.
Okay. This one I'm dreading, this musical tribute. I can only imagine a dedication to her son by Rob's mom. That is a powerful song to begin with.
Yes, all of those. And you'll probably see a picture collage and everything else that will come up there probably several times throughout the ceremony.
That will certainly be moving. Sergeant Ryan Adamson, many of you know him. He is the public information officer that we deal with as the media. He will be giving the eulogy, and we saw a short snippet with him at the beginning of this broadcast of how moved he was. He and Rob were dear friends.
Really good friends, and he's actually the liaison with the family, so with the family and everyone else, including the critical incident team. And that's no easy task.
No. There are a lot of people hurting today. The community is hurting, people who didn't even know him. I received a call from a woman earlier this week who Rob had helped her find her niece. Her niece was missing, and she was just sobbing on the phone because he helped that family, numerous families that we don't even know about.
Hundreds, probably thousands. Again, like most officers, and you know, quite frankly, you bring some things up that I can tell you as police officers, we're so frustrated and so angered by something like this, and we always ask ourselves why. I'm sure everybody else does too, but we ask ourselves why. We mean to do no harm. Mm-hmm. We just want something resolved. I can assure you, we don't want to put handcuffs on anybody unless we absolutely have to. And then doing something like this, looking for somebody that I would assume is pretty bad in society, to get them off the streets and out of harming other people. And then something like this happens, and it's a hard pill to swallow.
Oh, I can only imagine. You lost a colleague. We want to see that the end of the line is coming soon. Our photographer, Tony Casasilla, is standing there now, Scott. So you can see that that's the end of the line. So the file by is getting into Holman Center.
Yeah, you'll see the officers, again, that will be the end. Now, that's still quite a ways out because they still have to file all the way down and then in front of the casket.
Right.
And you probably still have civilians pouring in as well from other areas.
And the tradition of the file by is, again, for the officers to pay respect, correct, to the
Yes.
casket, to
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Okay. Again, the Blue Knights, and this is, you say, a group of retired officers, many of them?
Predominantly retired officers, some active officers as well. And there's others too, but that's the majority.
They are holding the American flag and also the thin blue line flag, all to show respect. Many of them have come from all over the state, all over the country, to show respect to their fallen colleague. We're going to go inside the Holman Center again, where it is filling up. This is the floor of the Holman Center. Those officers are filing by.
Yeah, that's quite an amount there. That's probably about 1,500 on the floor right there. And you can't see the rest of the bowl is what we call it. I'm guessing 8,500. That's going to be awfully close.
And you say these are officers from all over the place: New York City, Texas, Chicago, Arizona.
Dallas, Virginia, and I believe, I thought I saw at least yesterday, California. That may have just been for the viewing, but they're from all over the place.
And as we have heard before, the Terre Haute Police Department and all of them, they always go as a group whenever there's a fallen colleague in the state or even outside the state.
I can't remember one funeral that I've not seen a Terre Haute officer at.
Really says a lot, doesn't it, about the men and women of Terre Haute. This is, of course, a demonstration of honor, and it is a sight that is a sight to see, that's for sure. Now, we also want to mention again, if you're just tuning in, the honor of the two gentlemen that are the two officers there at the casket. They never ever leave Rob alone, and will not until he is laid to rest.
That's right. From the very minute where he passed and they pronounced, till the last person walks away, there will always be somebody there. Now, they will pull away now, but you have 1,500 cops in that room.
Sure, sure. Have you had to do that position before?
I have.
Tell us about that.
It's only 10 or 15 minutes when you think about it, but standing there and then having to observe and feel the emotions, not just officers, but again, family and friends walking by, it's hard to do. And to maintain your composure, you know why you're doing it. Again, the best we can do is the least we can do. Try to maintain that perspective going through there, and it's difficult. I mean, your knees are locked, and there's a lot of procedures you have to go through with the rifle and when you're standing that watch, and it's when the emotions are all involved with all of it, it's sometimes hard to remember what you're supposed to be doing. It's not just standing there. There's requirements and duties to get there, to stay there, and then when you walk away from there, to keep transitioning.
Now, one of the things that we will see and hear today that will be very moving is the last call. Is that the correct term? The final call?
The final call, last call, or we call it 1042.
Okay.
And that will be the last time they call an officer off duty. Usually when an officer gets done with their shift, they will call 1042, or dispatch will call them 1042. That means that their time is over. They've done their 8, 12 hours, whatever the case may be. And Rob Pitts will never have another one after this.
How will that work? What will we hear? Tell us what we're going to hear today.
The dispatch a dispatcher will probably signal for or check on their status. There will likely be no response, obviously, and they will do that several times. They will hit what's called an alert tone to try to get the officer's attention. If an officer's not answering their radio, they will hit what's called the alert tone. If they still don't get an answer, they will dispatch other units. That likely won't happen, obviously, in this case, but what will happen is they will do a brief bio, and they will thank the officer for his service.
It will be very touching and very moving, and again, 7 years ago they did this as well for Brent Long. They will, as the procession starts, as they leave Holman Center after the service, they will stop by the Terre Haute Police Department to have that honor and to do that tradition, and then follow on to the procession. Our hearts are with you. Our hearts are with you.
Thanks.
He's a colleague of yours as well. There is going to be a message today from several friends of Rob's, and in the procession, at the very beginning of the procession, we'll see some motorcycles. Those are symbolic because Rob's motorcycle is going to be in that.
They are. So you'll have pallbearers, and you'll have honorary pallbearers, and you will have motorcycles, civilian and officer motorcycles. So one of the components there is the officers' motorcycles will actually be all around the coach, escorting it all the way to the entrance of the cemetery. And from that point, the flagfold detail will put a hand on the coach, and they will walk it all the way to the graveside. It's really astounding to see. The choreography that's involved and everything else, there's a lot of practice that goes into it. And it is very, very difficult. And I've done this as well, riding a motorcycle on the coach, trying to keep a specific distance and specific speed, and especially when you're talking 26 miles to do this, is no easy task.
Well, and it's really neat in that Rob's best friend is going to drive his motorcycle. Rob was a huge motorcycle lover. His best friend will be on his motorcycle in this procession, and that's really special.
And it's a gorgeous motorcycle. They actually had it at the viewing. I don't know if you're able to see that, but they had it at the viewing last night. It was one of the, obviously the main pieces just before you walked into the viewing room. It's gorgeous, gorgeous motorcycle, and I can see why he's a fan.
Let's take a look inside again, the Terre Haute Holman Center, a live look there. These folks are the men and women in uniform, and their wives are filing by. It looks like, Scott, that filing is starting to slow down.
And it could be maybe just a gap or something of that nature that, you know, some people get hung up and it's difficult. Emotions may kick in, so it could hold the line up, but it looks to be the end.
After the filing goes by, that you will see the two, are they called honor guard officers?
Yes, or casket watch is what we call them.
Casket watch officers there. They will step aside and the funeral will begin. It will begin with opening remarks by Detective Dan Walls. He is the chaplain of the Terre Haute Police Department. Scripture will be read, musical tributes, all country music today. Rob was a big country music fan. The speakers, a lot of dignitaries will be there, including the Joe Donnelly, the United States Senator, Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch. She is the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Indiana, of course, the Mayor of our city, Duke Bennett, and Chief John Plassey. More family remembrances by family friends, the eulogy by Sergeant Ryan Adamson, and another message by Sergeant Todd Haller, who is another chaplain with the Terre Haute Police Department. These men, they know Rob well inside and out, at work and at play.
Yeah, and they're going to tell Rob's story from their perspective to several thousand people, and even more watching as it progresses.
And I'm sure we'll get to know the type of man that Rob was through all of these people, through their hearts and through their words. Okay, as you can see here, Scott, those guards, those casket watch guards, it looks like are beginning to walk off.
Yep. So they're
going back.
changing them now. So there still may be more.
Okay.
What you'll see is the officer in charge, the OIC as we call them. Police works about acronyms for whatever reason.
Okay.
But they'll go down and they'll pull the guard or the casket watch off for the final time, and then you'll see somebody step up. Somebody may be directing the program as it progresses. I don't know that. They usually play that by ear.
Okay. What I can tell you, we are going to be as respectful as possible. The family, of course, wants their privacy, understandably. You will not see a close-up of a family member here on News 10. We are going to be as respectful to them as possible in their time of mourning. And as you can see anyway, this is a very wide shot of the Holman Center, of the floor. But as people start proceeding out of the funeral, we will not show you close-ups of the family. There will be lots of emotion there, and we at News 10 just want to be as respectful as possible.
And that is very common, because I mean, who wants people, thousands and thousands of people, to see them at their worst moment? Not just family, but that's very understandable, and it happens more often than not.
You know, this community has been very respectful. There have been signs throughout the Wabash Valley. Look at that, Officer Pitts, we salute you. Children that are learning the history of what you, the men and women in blue, do. Signs throughout the community honoring Badge 196, that is Rob's badge number. honoring the work that he did and also the work that the Terre Haute Police Department does, thanking them for their service, rest in peace. It really has been moving the last couple of days, driving around town and seeing the community come together. Again, a very generous, patriotic, loving Wabash Valley.
It is so many signs, even driving this morning, looking at how many more signs had gone up this morning, or people putting it on their marquees. And I think what's even more impressive, again, like as I said earlier, when the officers in the procession get to see all the signs and the people, and especially the kids standing there, and my guess is going to be quite a few to be out there, and it almost turns into, from a cop perspective, it almost turns into a parade type thing. And I know that seems kind of weird, but it's like we get to see people thanking us and we get to thank them back. So this is a great service to every officer.
Yes, it is. Scott, we're going to show live now. The funeral is beginning and it looks like people are starting to speak. Are we hearing anything yet? No, the officers are still there by the casket.
You may see the officer in charge, I believe, right now walking up, and then he will go up and pull.
It should be the Detective Dan Walls will be opening the service today. He is the chaplain with Terre Haute Police Department. He will be opening up the service, I imagine, with a prayer. I love that sign that says, "Fly high, Officer Pitts." I love that sign. That's exactly what we hope he is doing right now. Tell us what we're seeing.
Can't get higher than heaven on that note. So now he is pulling the final guard of the final casket watch. They'll come, they'll turn around, they'll all three, the one you see in the middle will be a hand salute, the other two will salute with their rifles, then they will step off. Once they clear, the service will begin.
Let's listen in.